Wow. Hey, much love and respect. Pura vida, mi gente. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you guys taking the time to do that out of your day. Today, we're going to read and learn about the oldest mounds, most likely in the world, but definitely in the Americas, but most likely in the world as well. Talking about the oldest mounds, earthen mounds, man-made structures, oldest in the world, right? In Louisiana. In Louisiana, confirmed. We're going to read an article published just 2 years ago, a very scholarly scientific study done on these mounds to prove the so-called age, based on their dating methods. Now, we know we got to dodge the hijack with their carbon-14 datings, but I just want to show that even with their hijack dating system, it's showing that it's a lot older than they thought. All right. So they might be giving us a minimum. They might be saying, oh, this is 11,000 years ago, when it might have been 20,000 years ago, 30,000 years ago, 40,000 years. What are they really doing? We have to trust their carbon datings. But even with their carbon datings, they're giving it an age of 11,000 years ago, making it the oldest man-made earthen structures in the Americas and possibly, again, in the world. All right? In the world. In Louisiana. All right, so let's get to the article. Let's go right now. Let's start right away. So I want to start out real quick. We go to the Louisiana State University website. They actually have a little story on this. Just going to start out with this real quick and read this for you guys. It says here, new research shows LSU campus mounds as the oldest known man-made structures in the Americas. Possibly even of the world. All right. So this is an image of the mounds. We're going to see how old they are, guys. It says Baton Rouge. New research reveals more information about the LSU campus mounds, including the discovery of thousands of years old charred mammal bone fragments in a coordinated alignment of both mounds towards one of the brightest stars in the night sky. So not only is this old, it's aligned to the skies, to the stars. So people that built this had an advanced knowledge of astronomy, math, architecture. These are very advanced people. Okay, this new information offers more insight into the oldest known man-made structures in the Americas. The two large grassy mounds that are about 20 feet tall on LSU campus are among the more than 800 man-made hill-like mounds in Louisiana. 800 alone, that they've officially declared mounds, right, in Louisiana, built by ancient indigenous people. While many mounds in the region have been destroyed, the LSU campus mounds have been preserved and are listed on the National Register for Historic Places. It says here, there's nothing known that is man-made and this old still in existence today in the Americas except the mounds. Right? And that was Brooks Elwood from the LSU Department of Geology and Geophysics, Professor Emeritus. It says this study was published in the American Journal of Science by Yale University. Elwood and colleagues collected sediment cores from the two mounds that are located on LSU's campus along Dalrymple Drive to learn more about them. The cores revealed layers of ash from burned reed and cane plants, as well as the burnt mammal bones. Radiocarbon dating of the layers of material indicates the mounds were built over thousands of years. These findings show that people began to build the first mound about 11,000 years ago, guys. Come on now. 11,000 years ago. That was way older than any so-called Egyptian pyramids or anything over there on the other side of the world that's supposed to be the old world. Remember, these mounds are aligned to celestial stars. These were advanced people 11,000 years ago. And that's, minimum, right? With their so-called carbon dating that we got to go up. But even with their carbon dating, it's saying, hey, look how old this is. The scientists think that sediment for the southern mound, which they've named Mound B, was taken from a location immediately behind LSU's Hill Memorial Library because there is a large depression in the ground there. The mound was built up over a few thousand years, layer by layer, to about half of its current height. The layers of ash and charred microscopic bone fragments may indicate the mound was used for ceremonial purposes, which included burning reed and cane plants to make large, hot fires that would have been too hot for cooking. The scientists do not know what type of mammals were cremated or why. However, they found many microscopic charred bone fragments, known as osteums, the building blocks of large mammal bones, in the ash beds in both LSU campus mounds. Then around 8,200 years ago, the southern Mound B was abandoned. Three roots found in the 8,200-year-old sediment layer indicated that the mound was not used for about 1,000 years. Also about 8,200 years ago, the northern hemisphere experienced a major climate event with temperatures suddenly dropping on average by about 35 degrees Fahrenheit, which lasted about 160 years. We don't know why they abandoned the mounds around 8,200 years ago, but we do know their environment changed suddenly and dramatically, which may have affected many aspects of their daily life, Elwood said. All right, and it keeps going. All right, this was again from their website. We're gonna go to the actual study, the actual article and study on the mounds. What they did, these scientists, what they found out when they were doing their test scientific research, right? This is the article right here. This is from the American Journal of Science from volume 322 or 322 of June 2022. This is very recent, guys. It's not that old. Page 795, 827 on the American Journal of Science, volume 322, okay? And the title of this is the LSU campus mounds, with construction beginning at 11,000 before the present, are the oldest known extant man-made structures in the Americas. In Louisiana. And look at all the people involved. You got Brooks B. Elwood, Sophie Warney, Rebecca A. Hawkworth, Suzanne H. Elwood, Jonathan H. Tompkin, Samuel J. Bentley, DeWitt H. Broad, and Jeffrey C. Clayton. Again, this is fair use. We're just going to go ahead and do commentary on the studies and review this scientific work here on the oldest mounds in Americas, possibly in the world. Possibly, show me any older mounds anywhere else in the world. Show me. It says here, abstract. Radiocarbon dating of the two LSU campus mounds indicates that the construction of one, Mound B, began at 11,000 years ago before the present, making Mound B the oldest known and intact man-made structure in the Americas. The age analyses presented here are based on 31 sea dates. The older, deeper parts of both of the LSU campus mounds contain many thin, burnt ash lenses, suggesting that the mounds may have been used for ceremonial or cremation purposes. These ash layers are composed mainly of phytoliths, biosilicate, structural compounds in plants that remained after burning of these plants. Analysis of the abundant ash lenses indicates that the plants burned were mainly C4 hydrophilic grasses that are dominated by 90 to 98% reed and cane plants. The ash layers also contain microscopic fragments of burned large mammal osteons or bones. The layers of reed and cane phytoliths containing very small numbers of osteons are indicative of very hot fires. This finding supports the argument that the fires were used for ceremonials or cremations. No ash beds later than 5,000 before the present are known from either Louisiana State University campus Mound A or B. Although at 800 before the present years, a wooden post, now charcoal, was planted and burned on the top of Mound B. It appears that construction of Mound B began during the climate amelioration that followed the Younger Dryas climate event which ended at 11,700 years before the present. You guys hear that? Construction of Mound A appears to have begun at 9,500 years ago before the present. Building of the LSU campus mound shows a hiatus when climate deteriorated during the 8,200 climate event. Okay, you guys hear that? Which defined the end of the Holocene Greenlandian stage and the beginning of the North Grippian stage. Because we're talking about ages, huh? Resets. Construction began again at 7,500 before the present, when both mounds continued construction until 6,000 years ago before the present, with one apparently anomalous date in Mound A at 5,100 years before the present. So it says here, introduction. The LSU campus mound site, located on the Louisiana State University campus, consists of two conical earthen structures, each about 5.5 meters in height and built by indigenous people upon the Pleistocene age. Lowest terrace, all right, on which the core of the LSU campus has been constructed. They built right over this. You guys think that's right? The crest of LSU campus mounds, A northern and B southern, are located 56 meters apart. Construction on Mound B appears to have begun as early as 11,000 years before the present. 11,000 years ago. Sigma refers to standard deviation. At the one level, the standard deviation is 68.2%, while at second level, it is 95.4%. This means that if 14 or carbon-14 age has a plus or minus 30-year range at one, this is science stuff, right? When 100 samples are analyzed on the same exact carbon, 68.2 of the time the sample would produce similar results within plus or minus 30 years. Okay, so you guys know, I know a lot of you guys like the science talk, and a lot of you probably majoring in stuff like this, so you might find this really interesting. You know, you can definitely pause and take a screenshot and see all the work. I just want to show you guys this. Look at all the sources being used, all this people quoting this and supporting this, backing this up, all the departments, all the different universities. Okay, so at the time Mound building began 11,000 years before the present, the Pleistocene lowest terrace bordered on what was then the Mississippi River Valley estuary, which has a modern analog in Mobile Bay, Alabama. The LSU campus mounds are just two of the 800 mounds known from Louisiana and were shown in the initial LSU 1927 campus construction plan as an isolated area intended for preservation. Thus, the LSU campus mounds were not destroyed, as were many other ancient mounds in Louisiana, including the Montesano Mounds, located 12 kilometers north of the LSU campus, with dates ranging from 7,500 to 4 or 5,000 years before the present. Those are really old too. Those second ages. The LSU campus mounds are listed on the National Register of Historic Places as the LSU campus mounds. The LSU campus mounds were first recognized in the 1800s, with archaeological work starting in the late 1900s, following the death in 1984 of a sunbathing student who was run over by a small truck that was driven over the northern Mound A. Special efforts were made by LSU to protect these structures and to increase safety around them. This work was accompanied by archaeological excavations, which included coring and subsurface excavation around the exterior margin of both Mound A and Mound B. However, diagnostic artifacts were scarce. A conclusion from the remediation and research at that time was that the LSU campus mounds were built around 5,800 years before the present. In one construction phase, at that time, 6 long cores were recovered, 3 from Mound A and 3 from Mound B, and Hamburg, and his thesis work showed through chemical analysis of these cores that each mound was built from different source materials. However, Hamburg 1991 did not date samples from the mounds. His conclusions concerning the different materials used to build the mounds are supported by the work reported here, where in 2009 we recollected 2 giddings, all right, one of 0.05 meters diameters, the other 6.4 meters long cores, one from the northern Mound A and one from the southern Mound B, figure 2. All right, so here's their little tables, as you guys can see. all the scientific work, all the science enthusiasts out there, scientists. All right, here's your language. So they're just, letting you know what's going on here. So the core showed that Mound A was built from sediment collected from either the local estuarine floodplain, which at that time was about 150 meters away from the LSU campus mounds, and below the top of the Pleistocene lowest terrace, or Mound A, may have been constructed from the dark mud that developed in lakes on top of the Pleistocene lowest terrace. Mound B, on the other hand, was built from lowest collected from the Pleistocene lowest terrace on which the LSU campus mounds sit. All right, and here's some LSU campus mounds cores. All right, this is how they do some of the sampling. Okay, that's the soil. This is what they collect. The prominent Histolith layer examples. All right, says the oldest previously dated. So it says early known dates for mounds in North America. So it's the oldest previously dated and well-documented published dates for mounds built by indigenous people in North America are from the Montesano mounds discussed above, with ages from 7,500 to 4,956 before the present. So that was the oldest they had accepted so far, which was also in Louisiana, and also the 5,500 before the present date from the Watson Break Mound complex in northeast Louisiana. We've gone over that mound, a site at which the indigenous mounds have not been destroyed. Older dates ranging from circa 900 to 7,300 before the present have been reported for mounded shelf features in Tennessee that were excavated during the Depression in the 1930s. And today, these are generally submerged under the Kentucky Lake and are not easily accessible. Wow, they flooded these mounds that were pretty old, right? Almost 7,500 years old in Tennessee. Huh. And these are what now under the Kentucky Lake? They probably built a dam. They flooded the indigenous town there and the mounds. You see that, guys? Wow. So we're going to look into that one for sure, the Kentucky Lake. It is known that humans were present in North America by at least 22,000 before the present. That's the oldest they want to give it, because they found the footprints right there in New Mexico, right? That dates about 22 to 25,000 years, but we have so much evidence of humans being in North America and the rest of the Americas way before that. We got sites 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 years old, even 100-something thousand. Shout out to Graham Hancock and everybody else letting us know. Yeah, so, we dodge the hijack when they give us dates here. That they have to go by an accepted range, because these are scientists still under the universities. They can't go too far out. Now they'll get laughed at and not funded. And that's what Graham Hancock be worried about. But he still be, spilling the beans sometimes. So they're saying that it is generally accepted by the archaeological community in Louisiana that humans occupied the southern Louisiana region as early as 12,000 years before the present. And we're going to go over something before we leave today, showing that there was evidence of people there way before that in southern Louisiana. All right. So, in the latest Pleistocene, at least 10,000 years after the arrival of humans in North America. So again, this is going with the Bering Strait stuff. It is reasonable to assume that ancient communities living at the beginning of the Holocene, after 10,000 years of human interaction and development in North America, that these communities were capable of community interaction in the form of collaborative action as part of their cultural development. So then it goes on to saying current LSU mounds research. Okay, that's what they're going to do. It says mounds in North America. I'm going to read this part. It says there are mainly two types of mounds found in North America: earthen mounds made from local sediment sources and shell mounds. Shell middens are also found mainly along the Florida coast. Earthen and shell mounds are found all over central and eastern North America, from Oklahoma and Iowa west of the Mississippi River Valley to along the east coast of North America. There are thousands of these mounds, and a number of localities are now national park areas, including Poverty Point National Monument in Louisiana, containing mainly earthen mounds, effigy mounds, National Monument in Iowa, containing shell mounds in the shape of animals, and Canaveral National Seashore in Florida, containing large shell mounds. At one time, there were a large number of shell mounds in Canaveral, NS, but only 3 remained: Turtle Mound, Castle Windy, and Seminole Rest, with the shells from others having been mined and road building material. The shells used in building these mounds were harvested by indigenous people from the Indian River, which flows north along the eastern U.S. coastline, behind a barrier island peninsula separating the Indian River from the Atlantic Ocean to the east. Okay, so here's a graph right here. It says LSU campus mounds interpreted cross sections, and you guys can see what they're comparing. Here on this side, depth and mounds in meters. All right, Pleistocene Loess Terrace. Says there are interesting cases where the indigenous mounds have been preserved and used by relatively recent human cultures for various purposes. For example, there is a ceremonial earthen mound located 200 meters to the east of Louisiana State Capitol building in downtown Baton Rouge, Louisiana. This mound is dated at 1,000 years before the present, and it has a flat platform on which sit 2 Revolutionary War cannons. This platform was probably flattened during the Revolutionary War and used as a gun platform. The Battle of Baton Rouge occurred in 1779 at this site and was the only Revolutionary War battle fought outside of the original 13 American colonies. The mound was later used as a cemetery for Army officers. Wow. Another example of relatively modern usage of indigenous mounds is that of the shell mounds and middens found along the eastern coast of Florida in the town of Ponce Inlet. Here, some of the shell mounds were flattened, and in at least one case, a relatively modern personal home was built on one of these mounds. While the shell debris scraped from the mound in preparing the mound for the house was used in building an access road to the house. And it says here, mounds in North America. 2. Platform mounds are known from Louisiana, mound sites such as Poverty Point in northeast Louisiana, and the Montesano Mounds, once located on the east bank of the Mississippi River to the north of the LSU campus, before they were destroyed. The platform construction interpretation is tested here, and the results are presented below. Dates, Table 1 from the LSU campus mounds and the Pleistocene Loess Terrace on which they sit indicate that the LSU campus mounds are younger than the Pleistocene Loess Terrace and were built beginning in the earliest Holocene. All right, and here's another graph. See that? Okay. There's an analog to the work reported here comes from the work at the Poverty Point World Heritage Site in Louisiana, where hot cane fires on Poverty Point, Mound B, there destroyed most of the bone, leaving only small bone fragments in these fires. However, in one case, a recognizable piece of burnt human bone was recovered. It is interesting to note that at the base of Poverty Point, Mound B, a thick ash bed containing abundant phytoliths, the microscopic silicate structural elements of plants, was recovered, and this layer appears very similar to the thick ash bed recovered from the base of LSU campus Mound B, thus the Poverty Point analog. This layer at the base of LSU campus Mound B has been dated with 2 dates in the range of 11,000 years before the present. Okay, studies says here, mounds in North America. 3. Studies of mound built by indigenous people in Louisiana and throughout the Mississippi River Valley have a rich history, from purely descriptive analysis and useful applications of geoelectric, magnetic, and carbon isotopic dating techniques. Mounds are commonly constructed as either domes or platforms by excavating, transporting, and redepositing local sediment, occasionally through the use of baskets. Mounds are generally conical in shape and range in scale from isolated features occupying several square meters, such as the LSU campus mounds, to very large sites containing multiple mounds. Some mounds in the Mississippi River Valley were constructed with flat tops and are known as platform mounds. In some instances, sediment was built up along many parallel ridges. Many mounds were constructed on Pleistocene lowest terraces within the Mississippi River Valley. The location and duration of mound occupation would have been tightly controlled by shifts in the fluvial system as a consequence of frequent flooding and avulsion, or due to major climate changes such as the end of the Younger Dryas, which was 11,700 years ago before the present, and climate amelioration, or the beginning of the 8,200 years before the present event, a time of major climate deterioration. So something happened in those two dates. These unpredictable changes have been put forth as a possible explanation for the abandonment of Watson Break around 4,800 years before the present. A similar hiatus has also been attributed to river control changes, disrupting earthwork construction. With increased population densities during the Coles Creek and Mississippian periods, 1150 to 700 before the present, the number and construction of mounds changed to include the development of architectural complexes with a central plaza and mounds of varying heights. As a direct consequence of these changing communities, mounds from archaeological periods and phases are associated with specific cultures, having distinct styles of construction, likely reflecting variable mound functions. Mounds have been described as serving numerous functions, including an observational role, thus allowing hunters to view prey more easily, and as a ritual sites important to the local peoples. The mid-archaic mounds in Louisiana, which are 3,550 years before the present old, based on their distribution, scale, and lack of mixed associated objects, suggest a localized tradition that later shifted in the late Archaic due to increased interactions between large numbers of people, as interpreted for Poverty Point. Poverty Point is one of the most interesting examples of mound complexes that were likely constructed by a complex hunter-gatherer society, and it is an intriguing example of late Archaic earthwork architecture in the Mississippi River Valley. Mound used by Techefunte and Marksville cultures include earthworks used for burials. Baton cultures include the use of mounds for feasts, with the development of large pits likely used for communal feasting. During the transition to the Coles Creek culture, mounds continued to serve a social or religious role as tumuli, an ancient burial mound, with interment of individuals at the tops of these features. In addition, Coles Creek flat-top platform earthworks were arranged around level plazas, and mound use may have also included residential as well as mortuary purposes, as observed from previous cultures by Rowe and Schillen. Similar mound construction and the use was suggested for the Mississippi period as well. A detailed discussion of mound use, construction, and developments in Louisiana and the Mississippi River Valley has been published by Rouge, 2010. While many aspects of mounds may never truly be resolved, such as their local height and their exact function, much can be learned from these archaeological sites, including the potential for archaeological remains and possibly the timing or rate of construction and source of sediments. Most of the pre-Columbian earthworks recorded in the Mississippi River Valley, particularly in Louisiana and elsewhere in the Americas, have not been extensively examined. Right? They haven't even been explored, excavated, or anything to determine their cultural association, methods of construction, or their potential for associated artifacts. In the case of the Mississippi River Valley, this leaves significant gaps in our understanding of mound usage in an area where some of the oldest earthworks in North America are preserved, and I would say oldest earthworks in the world. Analysis of mounds in Louisiana has evolved from purely physical descriptions and comparisons to detailed examinations of the geoarchaeological context of these features. For example, electrical resistivity and magnetometer profiling provides non-invasive and cost-effective techniques for the examination of the subsurface without trenching or full excavations. In addition, the development of the electrical cross-sections, the pseudo-sections from measured that px or pi data provides insight into anomalies in the subsurface, which can inform and guide subsequent archaeological excavations. So, all right, here we go with they're saying there's so many other ways to excavate it. You don't have to dig, and they're, giving you the examples here. So that's kind of like what I wanted to read in this article. As you guys can see, it keeps going and more scientific talk, trying to, scientists try to really convince people. They ain't joking around. This is their career on the line, and, their smarts and wisdom and what they've learned and how they apply what they were taught to learn and use, these scientific methods that they're following to get these dates. Is basically what they're talking about here. Description, of course, is the next subject. As you guys can see, very thorough article and analysis, again, done by a section of Yale University and with these professors that are also on LSU. All right, again, we're going to go right to the beginning so you guys can know, from the American Journal of Science, volume 322 from June 2022. Again, the oldest known extant man-made structures in the Americas, possibly in the world. Show me any older ones in the world. 11,000 years ago in Louisiana. But before the dismount, we're here at this website, AppalachianResearch.com. It says here, the Americas revealed, unraveling the past of the Americas while preserving that past for the future. And here's that same picture. It says here, the 11,000-year-old mounds at Louisiana State University change everything. It changes the way you see history. You have to rewrite history. This is the point of why I'm doing this, so you guys can understand. This is very impactful. Talking about the true old world. It says here by Richard L. Thornton, architect and city planner. On August 26, 2022, the world of Native American anthropology was turned upside down. LSU professor Emeritus Brooks Elwood presented to a packed room full of students, professors, and reporters a summary of the archaeological study of two longtime landmarks on the Louisiana State University campus in Baton Rouge. They were Indian mounds, in parentheses, that apparently in the past had been ignored by the LSU anthropology department, but had been assumed to be about 1,000 to 2,000 years old. That's as far back as they were given the dates for these. You see that? They wasn't trying to make it older than that, because they would, again, rewrite history. So these are the images from the top, right? So the LSU campus was the site of a ceremonial grounds, and probably a village at least 11,000 years ago. All right, LSU campus, home to a village and ceremonial mounds and grounds. Come on, man, 11,000 years ago. People living advanced in the village, scientific architecture, advanced. The oldest Stonehenges are found in Canada. Sorry, the oldest mounds in Europe date from around 3,500 to 4,000 BC. Okay, older than the ones in Europe. So that's what I'm saying. Show me anything older. These are the oldest in the world. The oldest Stonehenges are found in Canada and date from around 3,500 BC. Initial construction of the Stonehenge in England is 3,000 BC. Savannah's Bilbo Mount and Port were dated to 3,545 BC. So about 5,500 years ago. It says Watson Break earthwork in Louisiana was dated to 3,450 BC. See how old these are, right, in Louisiana? The oldest burial mound in Ireland dates to 3,200 BC, all right? These are all older than the ones in Ireland, especially this one that's 11,000 years old, with their own science, okay? With their own science. The oldest burial mounds in Scandinavia date to 1,500 BC. You see what I'm saying? You're talking about Vikings and Danes came over here. We've been going over there to show them how to build mounds. We went over that in the history of America before Columbus book we were reading. Remember? It says the study had previously been published in the American Journal of Science by Yale University. As might be expected of gringo archaeologists, it was immediately attacked visually as being impossible. Retesting had confirmed the team's methodology and accuracy. So that, all right, don't worry, we'll retest again. Thus, Elwood felt confident in going before the general public. However, there has been no rush to change the orthodox portrayal of indigenous Americans by North American anthropologists as being primitive, wandering hunters 11,000 years ago. You see, that's the kind of image they're trying to portray, that 11,000 years ago, you got like Neanderthal cave people over here, so-called hunters and gatherers just coming up the Bering Strait. That's what they want you to think, not advanced people, not advanced melanated people, not advanced copper-colored tribes of America. Yeah, not Atlantis. They don't want you to to know that Atlantis was here, right? Now, this image shows the Springhouse Tavern in Woodstock, Virginia, where Bill and I periodically ate lunch to talk shop. This is also where BV, the French courtesan, and I ate lunch with Yoko Ono, widow of John Lennon. I had come straight from my farm wearing blue jeans and a flannel shirt, so both Yoko and the waitress assumed that I was BV's bodyguard. When I first read the article in the media about this discovery, I was astonished, but then thought back to lunchtime chat that I had with an archaeologist, Bill Gardner, at a restaurant in downtown Woodstock, Virginia, about 35 years ago. Earlier that autumn, we had moved our goat cheese creamery and farm to Toms Brooks, Virginia, and I had set up an office in historic Woodstock. I soon discovered that an archaeological firm, Thunderbird Associates, had set up shop in the 19th century house around the corner from my office. That was handy. Mankind had lived in the Shenandoah Valley for a long, long time. I would be needing the help of archaeologists frequently when restoring buildings or designing new buildings in the floodplain of the Shenandoah River. As our friendship and professional collaboration developed, Bill told me more and more about his work on the Shenandoah River near Front Royal, Virginia. He taught at American Catholic University, but the focus of much of his archaeological work before setting up shop in Woodstock had been a 2,500 archaeological zone that dated back to 9,500 BC. All right, that's 11,000 years ago, 11,500 years ago. The sites were called the Thunderbird Archaeological District and Flint Run Complex. You guys hear how old this is, right? The attraction for humans to settle there were large deposits of high-quality jasper, flint, and chert for making tools and weapons. By 8,000 BC, that's 10,000 years ago, a cluster of permanent villages had developed, the largest of which had at least 1,000 residents. On that particularly memorable lunch, Bill confided something surprising to me. These orthodoxy-shattering discoveries did not make him go down in history. He was thoroughly supported by the faculty at American Catholic University, but the archaeological profession as a whole in the United States had relegated him to being a pariah, shunned by most of his colleagues. You see, because he was going outside the script, because he was going against the mainstream narratives of false history, then he was shunned. Because he was saying, no, this site is actually older. You heard what he just said, right? So he was shunned, he was by his colleagues and not taken seriously. It really was not until the early 1990s when the National Park Service retested the site with radiocarbon dating that his occupation dates were generally considered factual. All right, guys, so this is a whole other area. We're not talking about Louisiana, right? We're talking about the Shenandoah Valley, right? We're talking about 11,000 years ago. People were living there too. There's evidence of village and all that, archaeological zone. This is funny and absolutely true. So simultaneously, archaeologists with the National Park Service were studying my farm in anticipation of it becoming a key property in the Shenandoah Battlefields National Park. One day, an excited archaeologist came to our front door to tell me that what they thought were Confederate artillery earthen forts were actually Indian mounds. Mr. Thornton, you have both Adena and Hopewell village sites on your farm. I didn't have a clue what Adena and Hopewell meant, so the next day I walked over to Thunderbird Associates to ask the experts, in parentheses. Bill loaned me books on the Adena and Hopewell cultures. It was the beginning of my education into North American anthropology. Up to that point, I had only studied Mesoamerican cultures. 20 years after his death from a heart attack in 2002, Bill Gardner is still being shunned. Read the Wikipedia article on the Thunderbird Archaeological District. Even though he devoted almost 3 decades of his career to being the supervising archaeologist for Thunderbird and Flint Run, his name is not mentioned in the article, only in one reference for the article. Wow. North American history and anthropology textbooks often do not even mention the Thunderbird archaeological zone because it doesn't fit with their narrations of Bering Strait. If they include them on lists of Paleo-American sites, the text does not tell you that there were large permanent villages on the site 9,000 years ago. Okay? Below is a verbatim reprint of the press release distributed about the LSU Mounds by the university. Says Dr. Brooks Atwood in front of the LSU Mounds. Says Baton Rouge new research reveals more information about the LSU campus mounds, including the discovery of thousands of years old charred mammal bone fragments and a coordinated alignment of both mounds towards one of the brightest stars in the night sky. So this is actually what we read earlier, right? Just going over that article, the same thing we read earlier. All right. So then around 7,500 years ago, the indigenous people began to build a new mound just to the north of the first mound. However, this time they took mud from the floodplain where the entrance of LSU's Tiger Stadium is currently located, which at that time was an estuary. With this mud, they built a second mound, Mount A, layer by layer to about half of its current height. Mount A contains mud that is saturated with water, which liquefies when agitated. As a result, Mount A is unstable and degrading, which is why it is critical to stay off the mounds to preserve them. According to the new analysis of the sediment layers and their ages, it looks like indigenous people cleared and the abandoned first built Mound B and began to build it up its current height before completing Mount A. Both mounds were completed around 6,000 years ago and are similar in height. The crests of both mounds are aligned along an azimuth that is about 8.5 degrees east of true north. According to LSU astronomer and study co-author Jeffrey Clayton, about 6,000 years ago, the red giant star Arcturus would rise about 8.5 degrees east of north in the night sky, which means it would have aligned along the crests of both LSU campus mounds. All right, Arcturus is one of the brightest stars that can be seen from Earth. The people who constructed the mounds at about 6,000 years ago coordinated the structure's orientation to align with Arcturus, seen in the night sky at that time, Elwood said. Still, there is more to learn and discover about these archaeological treasures on LSU's campus. All right, so that's the end of this article as well. All right, so as you guys see, 11,000 years ago, one of the oldest mounds in the Americas, possibly the oldest mounds in the world. What other mounds? We're talking about dirt mounds, right? Structures. You know what other mounds in the world are older than this? I'll wait to you guys to show me one. All right. Until then, these are the oldest in the world, oldest mounds in the world, in the Americas, in the true old world. All right. And that's it for today, guys. Appreciate you guys tuning in once again. Give you your time back. Much love and respect. Pura vida, mi gente. Wow.